Dealership manager ejects, black customer. He reveals he owns the company, and she's fired. He walked into the dealership wearing nothing but a hoodie, sneakers, and an attitude that screamed underestimated. But what they didn't know, he owned the place. The same people who judged him for how he looked were about to watch their world crumble. How? Because sometimes the biggest mistake you can make is thinking you know someone by their clothes. If you've ever been judged by your appearance, hit that like button. Drop a comment below if you've ever been underestimated. And trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Hit subscribe now, because this is just the beginning of a game-changing story. Stay with us. It gets wild from here. Maxie had never been one to flaunt his wealth. He preferred the quiet power of anonymity. Walking into Prestige Motors, a luxury dealership he had recently acquired, he dressed down gray hoodie, faded jeans, and sneakers. The kind of look that screams just another guy passing through. He didn't want anyone to recognize him, not yet. He needed to see the truth. How would they treat a real customer? The ones who didn't look like they could afford the six-figure cars parked outside. As he stepped through the glass doors, the cool air hit him. The showroom was sleek, with high-end cars gleaming under the bright lights. He glanced around, taking in the glossy finishes and polished chrome. Employees were scattered around chatting casually, but as soon as they noticed Maxie, their laughter died down. Eyes flickered in his direction just long enough to size him up. And there it was. The look, the judgment. Maxie wasn't blind. He could feel the shift in the air. They saw him, but they didn't see him. Not for who he really was. They were making assumptions based on what he wore, not who he was. And that's exactly why he was here. Lana, the dealership manager, approached him. Sharp features, tailored blazer, a clipboard tucked under her arm like it was a shield. She was the kind of woman who walked into a room and expected to command respect, and right now she didn't seem to have much for Maxie. Her smile was tight, polite, but clearly she wasn't thrilled to see him. "Can I help you with something?" she asked, her voice cool and dismissive. Maxie smiled back, not fazed, just here to look around. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned him, sizing him up. "Are you shopping for a car?" Maxie didn't hesitate. "Something like that." She glanced at his sneakers, his hoodie, and her smile faltered just a fraction. "Well, we cater to a very specific clientele here," she said, almost too smoothly. "Most of our inventory requires pre-qualification. Perhaps I could recommend..." Before she could finish, another employee called out to her. She glanced away for a moment, but the look she gave Maxie as she turned back spoke volumes. "Don't wander too far." Her tone shifted sharper now. "These vehicles start at 6 figures. Maybe I can direct you to a dealership that specializes in more budget-friendly options." Maxie raised an eyebrow, his tone still casual. "You assuming I'm not qualified?" For a brief moment, Lana's composure cracked. She quickly recovered, her posture stiffening. "I'm just trying to save you some time," she replied, her forced smile more tense than before. "If you're serious, we can set up an appointment." Maxie let the words linger in the air. He looked around, pretending to admire one of the cars, an aggressive-looking silver coupe. His fingers brushed the door handle, and he glanced back at her. "Nice car," he said, his voice soft. Lana's brow furrowed. "It is. Perhaps when you're ready to make a serious inquiry, we can arrange something." Maxie gave a slight nod, stepping back from the car. He wasn't about to let her dismiss him so easily. "All right," he said, hands in his pockets. "Let's hear it. What would you recommend for someone like me?" Lana blinked, caught off guard by his directness. She stammered, but quickly regained her composure. "Maybe something more budget-friendly. I can give you directions to a dealership that specializes in pre-owned vehicles." Maxie's lips twitched slightly, hiding the amusement he felt. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he let the tension hang between them. Finally, he spoke softly. "Quite the assumption." For a second, Lana faltered, but she quickly straightened. "I'll get you a list of options," she said, brushing past him, visibly annoyed. She was already done with him. But Maxie wasn't done yet. He'd seen enough. He wasn't here to be treated like this. He wasn't here to play by her rules. He was going to turn this whole thing around right now. Maxie leaned against the glossy showroom floor, his eyes fixed on the sleek cars that lined the room. The tension simmered in the air. Lana had left him standing there, pretending to admire a car, but he wasn't just looking at the cars anymore. He was looking at them, the employees, their quick glances, their whispers. It wasn't just about the cars. It was about how they saw him, or rather how they didn't see him. Lana came back a few moments later, her clipboard now clutched tightly to her chest, her smile forced. "All right," she said, clearly annoyed. "I've compiled a list of options that might be more suitable for you." Maxie took the list from her hand, scanning the paper without saying a word. A used sedan, an older SUV, a compact hybrid. His lips twitched again, but only for a brief moment. He folded the paper and tucked it into his pocket. "Appreciate the effort," he said flatly, his calm voice making her posture stiffen even more. But Lana wasn't finished. She seemed determined to make sure Maxie got the point that he didn't belong here. "Listen," she said, her voice dropping to a more serious tone. "I'm just trying to be realistic with you. Prestige Motors isn't for everyone. I don't want to waste your time." Maxie locked eyes with her, his voice steady but carrying weight. "What exactly makes you think I'm not your target customer?" Lana hesitated, but her certainty quickly returned. "I've been doing this a long time. I can tell when someone's out of their depth." Maxie's gaze didn't waver. He said nothing for a moment, letting the words hang in the air. His expression remained neutral, but inside the sting of her assumptions was sharp. "Out of my depth," he repeated, his voice neutral, but with a hint of something beneath. Interesting. Lana's eyes flickered, her confidence beginning to crack. She pressed on, but there was something almost defensive about her words now. "I'm just being honest. It's better to be upfront than to have someone leave disappointed." Maxie didn't flinch. "Honest, huh?" His tone softened ever so slightly, his eyes narrowing. "I like honesty. How about this? You let me speak to the owner. Think we can make that happen?" The look on Lana's face was almost comical. Disbelief, confusion, and irritation all in one. "The owner," she repeated the word, slipping out before she could even stop it. "That's not possible today. The owner doesn't just drop by for casual visits. They're a busy person." Maxie held her gaze, his calm demeanor now turning into something more pointed. "I think they'd want to meet me." He said it as though it was the most natural thing in the world, but the weight of his words was clear. Lana's forced smile tightened, and Maxie could see it now. Her patience was wearing thin. "Sir, I'm trying to be as polite as possible, but this is getting ridiculous. I have other customers to attend to. If you're serious about buying a car, we can schedule a meeting. Otherwise—" Her voice trailed off, the threat unspoken, but clear. Maxie straightened, his eyes locked on hers. "Otherwise," he repeated, his voice now edged with a firmness that could not be ignored. Otherwise, what the room seemed to hold its breath as Lana's mask slipped fully into frustration. She finally snapped, her posture rigid. "Otherwise, I'm going to have to ask you to leave." Maxie stood still, silent, for a long moment. The showroom around him felt frozen, as if the entire space were waiting for the next move. Maxie's gaze never left her. Slowly, without any dramatic gestures, he reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. "I'll make the call myself," he said calmly, scrolling through his contacts without looking at her. Lana's composure fractured as her irritation morphed into confusion. "What are you doing?" Maxie didn't answer at first. He lifted the phone to his ear and spoke into it as though it was the most mundane thing in the world. "Yeah, it's me. I'm at the dealership. Everything's fine. Just a little misunderstanding." "Could you let them know I'm here?" Lana stood there, dumbfounded. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Around them, the employees had started to notice the tension. They had stopped what they were doing, eyes wide with curiosity drawn into the unfolding scene. Maxie held up a finger, motioning for them to hold on. Then he turned slightly, speaking quietly into the phone. "Yeah, it's Maxie. I'm here at the dealership. Just a little situation. Could you let the owner know?" He ended the call and slipped the phone back into his pocket, turning back to Lana, as if nothing had happened. "They'll be here shortly," he said simply, his voice low but laced with a quiet authority. Lana's face paled as she took a step back, her hands gripping her clipboard. Who did you just call?" she stammered, her voice tinged with panic. Maxie glanced around the showroom, his eyes briefly meeting the gaze of the other employees, who were now watching with wide eyes. He didn't answer her right away. "Guess we'll find out," he said with a small, almost playful smile. The tension in the room was thick. The silence felt as if it had stretched on forever, punctuated only by the soft whispers from the staff. Lana stood frozen, her face flushed with embarrassment as the seconds ticked by. And then the sound of the main doors opening shattered the silence. The click of polished shoes echoed through the showroom as a sharply dressed man in a navy suit walked in. His demeanor was serious, but there was a warmth in his eyes as he approached Maxie. Mr. Thomas, the man greeted, his smile wide as he reached out for a handshake. "So good to see you." Maxie returned the handshake firmly, his lips curling into a faint smile. "Thanks for coming, Alex. Appreciate it." Lana's jaw dropped as she stood there staring in disbelief. Her confusion quickly morphed into panic as she looked between Maxie and Alex, her voice faltering. "Mr. Thomas?" She echoed, her voice barely a whisper. "You're the owner." Alex turned to her, his tone now sharp and professional. "Susan," he said, addressing her directly. "I think you've met Mr. Thomas already." Susan, Lana, now visibly shaken, stammered, looking from Alex to Maxie. I didn't realize," she mumbled. Alex didn't let her finish. "Didn't realize," he said, his voice suddenly clipped. "Mr. Thomas is the new owner of this dealership. I trust this wasn't the welcome you had in mind." Maxie raised his hand, stopping him. He turned to Lana with a calm but firm gaze. "It's all right, Alex. I think Lana and I just got off on the wrong foot." His voice was measured, but it carried an unmistakable weight. Maxie stood there, calm, but with a quiet intensity that made the room feel smaller. His eyes met Lana's, and for the first time, he saw the fear in her gaze, realizing that she had just made a dangerous miscalculation. But Maxie wasn't here for revenge, not exactly. He was here for something bigger, something that would shake this place to its core. Alex, still standing by the door, had a look of silent understanding in his eyes. He knew what Maxie was thinking. Maxie had worked hard to get where he was, not just in business, but in life. He'd faced judgments based on everything from his background to his appearance. But today, he wasn't just dealing with a few misguided assumptions. This was about an entire culture that needed to change, and he was about to lead that change. The silence in the showroom was deafening as Maxie addressed the room. "Lana," he began, his voice steady but laced with a quiet fury. "I don't think you fully understand what just happened here." His words hung in the air, as if daring her to speak to defend herself, but she remained silent, still trying to process everything. He wasn't angry. No, this wasn't about anger. This was about principle. This was about dignity, Maxie continued. "You assumed I didn't belong here. You saw me, and you saw my hoodie and sneakers, and you made your decision. But here's the thing. You don't get to decide who walks through that door and who doesn't. And neither does anyone else here." Lana shifted uncomfortably, but Maxie's gaze didn't leave hers. His voice dropped, each word measured. "What I've learned today isn't just about the assumptions you made about me. It's about the kind of place you run here. The culture of exclusion. The idea that only certain people who look a certain way, are worth your time." The staff in the showroom was watching now, some of them uneasy, others squirming under Maxie's unwavering stare. He could feel the tension building, but he wasn't finished. This wasn't just about Lana. This was about them. All of them. Everyone who thought it was okay to judge someone based on how they looked, not who they were. Maxie's voice grew more resolute. I'm not here to play your game. I'm here to change the rules." He turned to Alex, then back to the employees, letting the silence stretch out the weight of his words sinking in. "I'm going to be blunt. This culture ends today. It ends with you, Lana." Maxie glanced at her with a cool detachment that made her visibly shrink under the pressure. "I don't care about your assumptions. I don't care about your preconceptions. But I do care about respect. And from this point on, you're going to learn that it's not about who wears the nicest suit or who drives the flashiest car. It's about treating everyone who walks through that door with dignity." Lana's face had gone pale. She hadn't expected this. She hadn't expected him to fight back. She hadn't expected him to be the owner. Maxie wasn't finished. "You think this is about you and me?" "No. This is about every single person you've ever brushed aside, every person who didn't fit into your narrow vision of who belongs in a luxury dealership." His gaze swept over the rest of the staff who were now shifting in their seats, each of them clearly uncomfortable, but too stunned to say anything. He paused, letting the tension stretch, then continued. "I'm going to make sure every one of you knows what it feels like to walk into this dealership and be treated with respect. Because everyone deserves that chance. No one gets to feel like they don't belong." Maxie turned back to Lana, his voice dropping to a final heavy tone. "And if you can't get on board with that, if you can't change, then I'm afraid you'll be the one walking out of here, not me." The room was silent, the air so thick with tension it could have been cut with a knife. Lana looked like she was about to say something, apologize maybe, but Maxie wasn't interested in her words anymore. He wanted action. "This is just the beginning," Maxie added, turning his back to her and addressing the entire staff. "Change doesn't come from apologies. It comes from action. And if you're not ready for that, if you're not ready to treat every customer with the respect they deserve, then maybe you should start thinking about your future here." He turned on his heel, his voice now a quiet command. "Alex, let's meet with everyone in the conference room. It's time to start the real work." As the employees shuffled out, Maxie lingered for a moment, his mind already racing. He'd seen enough to know that this wasn't going to be easy. But it didn't matter. This was his dealership now, and if he had to tear it down to rebuild it into something better, something fairer, he would. The change was coming, and there was nothing anyone could do to stop it. The conference room was cold. The glass walls, the sleek modern furniture, it all screamed power authority. But today, it felt more like a cage. Maxie stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding. The employees, including Lana, filed in one by one, their faces a mixture of nervousness and disbelief. No one spoke. They all knew something had shifted, something they hadn't expected, and Maxie wasn't about to let this moment slip by. He looked around the room, his gaze steady, unwavering. "All right," he began, his voice firm but calm. "You all know who I am now. And if you didn't before, you do now. I'm Maxie Thomas, the new owner of this dealership." The words hung in the air, thick with tension. "And today I'm going to make sure you understand what kind of place this is going to be from now on." Lana shifted uncomfortably in her seat, her usual confidence gone. Maxie's eyes found hers, and he didn't look away. "Lana, you made a big mistake today," he said, his voice cutting through the silence. "You assumed I wasn't qualified to be here. You assumed I didn't belong. And that's not just wrong, it's dangerous." Lana opened her mouth to say something, but Maxie raised a hand, silencing her. "No, don't apologize. I'm not here for apologies. I'm here for results. I'm here for action. And that's what this dealership is going to need if it's going to survive under my leadership." The room was still. Everyone was watching him. The younger employees who had been whispering among themselves now sat completely still, unsure of how to react. Maxie could feel their uncertainty, their fear, but he wasn't here to coddle anyone. He was here to make a point. "I want to talk about culture." Maxie continued, his voice growing more powerful. "What's it been like for the customers who walked in here and didn't look like they belonged? What's it been like for them when they're treated like they don't matter?" His eyes swept across the group. "I'm not going to stand by and watch that continue. This dealership is going to be built on one simple rule: respect. If you can't give that to every customer, then you're not going to be part of this new vision." He let the silence settle again, his eyes locking with each employee's. "I've been underestimated all my life," he said, his voice quieter now but full of weight. "But I'm not here to prove anything to anyone. I'm here to create something real, a space where people are respected for who they are, not how they look." Lana's face had gone pale. Maxie could see the guilt in her eyes, but it wasn't enough. Guilt didn't fix this. Only change could. And Maxie was determined to lead that change. "Let me be clear." Maxie continued, his gaze never leaving Lana. "What happened today wasn't just a mistake. It's a symptom of a much bigger problem. The culture here. The idea that luxury and respect can only be afforded to people who look a certain way. That stops today." He turned his attention to the rest of the room. "The fact that you all stood by and let this happen, that's on you too. You might not have said anything, but you all saw it. You all knew it. And not one of you spoke up." "Well, I'm changing that. From now on, we speak up. We challenge bias. We challenge assumptions. No one walks through those doors and feels less than anyone else because of how they look, how they dress, or what they drive." Maxie paused, letting the weight of his words settle in. He could see the shift happening. The employees, though still uneasy, were listening now. And that was the first step. "I'm going to be blunt," Maxie said, leaning forward slightly, his voice dropping with authority. "This dealership is about to undergo a complete transformation. And I'm going to lead it. We're going to train every single one of you to understand what it means to treat people with dignity. No exceptions. I'm not just talking about the customers, I'm talking about each other. You treat each other with respect. You challenge the assumptions you make about people. And if you can't do that, then I suggest you start looking for a new job." The room was dead silent. The employees sat frozen, absorbing everything Maxie was saying. This wasn't just a pep talk. This was a declaration of war against a toxic culture that had festered for too long. Maxie's gaze found Lana once more, this time with a hint of something softer behind his eyes. "Lana," he said, his voice steady but not unkind, "I'm not going to fire you, but I am going to hold you accountable. You'll be leading the first training session. I want you to teach the rest of the team how to really engage with people. No judgment, no bias. You'll get the chance to change, and I'm giving you that chance. But you need to prove that you're willing to do the work." Lana nodded slowly, her voice barely audible. "I understand." Maxie's eyes softened just slightly. "Good. I hope you mean that." He turned to the rest of the team, his voice strong and clear. "We're going to have weekly check-ins, team-building exercises, and constant training. This isn't going to be easy, but it's necessary. If you're on board with that, then we're going to be a force to be reckoned with. If you're not, then I suggest you start looking for a new job." The tension in the room slowly began to fade, but there was a new energy in the air, an energy of expectation of change. Maxie knew it wouldn't be easy. He knew this wasn't going to happen overnight. But he was ready, and he would do whatever it took to ensure this dealership lived up to its potential, not just in profits, but in people. "All right," Maxie said, standing tall. "Let's get to work. It starts today." And just like that, the dealership was never going to be the same again. The next few days felt like a whirlwind. Maxie had turned the dealership upside down, but in the best way. The training sessions were tough, intense. Employees were forced to confront their biases head-on, to examine how their assumptions had shaped the way they interacted with customers. Lana, no longer the confident manager she once was, stood at the front of the room delivering the training Maxie had insisted on. It was a test for her, and Maxie made it clear there would be no shortcuts. If she was going to stay, she needed to change. The staff, once skeptical, were now engaged. Maxie didn't just talk the talk, he walked it. Every day he was there, monitoring, guiding, and making sure the culture shift wasn't just a one-time speech, but a long-term commitment. And as the days passed, it became clear Maxie was here to stay, and things were going to be different. But not everyone was convinced. One morning, as Maxie walked through the showroom, he noticed a familiar face lingering near the door. It was Chris, one of the senior salespeople who had been with the dealership for years. Chris had been quiet during the training, distant, his eyes always downcast as he avoided Maxie's gaze. Today, however, he approached Maxie with an almost nervous energy. "Can we talk?" Chris asked, his voice a little too cautious. Maxie stopped and gave him a nod. "Of course. What's on your mind?" Chris hesitated for a moment, then blurted out, "I'm not sure about all this. The training, the whole new culture thing. It feels forced, you know." Maxie raised an eyebrow. "Feels forced? Or does it just feel uncomfortable?" Chris shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know, man. It's just a lot to take in. I've been doing this job for years, and now everything's changing. It feels like we're being asked to be something we're not." Maxie studied him for a moment, then spoke, his tone measured but firm. "Chris, I get it. Change isn't easy. But if you can't see that the old way wasn't working, then we have a problem." He stepped closer, his voice softening just a touch. "This isn't about making you something you're not. It's about making sure we all treat people like they deserve to be treated, no matter who they are or what they look like." Chris seemed to chew on Maxie's words, and for a moment the tension between them hung in the air. Finally, Chris exhaled, his shoulders dropping as if a weight had been lifted. "I get it," he muttered. "I really do. It's hard, you know. We've all been set in our ways for so long." Maxie nodded. "I know, it's a process. But here's the thing. Chris, everyone deserves respect. No exceptions. You, me, customers, everyone. That's the baseline. If you're willing to meet me there, we'll make it work. But if you're not ready to make that leap, then maybe this isn't the place for you." Chris looked down, his fingers running over the edge of his sales desk. Then he raised his eyes and looked Maxie straight in the face. "All right, I'll give it a shot. But I'm not promising I'm going to get it right overnight." Maxie gave a small smile, his expression softening. "That's all I'm asking for. We'll get there together." As Chris walked away, Maxie couldn't help but feel a small sense of triumph. This was what he wanted: change, not through fear or force, but through understanding, patience, and respect. It wasn't going to be perfect, and it wasn't going to be quick, but it was happening. One step at a time. Back in the showroom, the energy was shifting. Employees who had once kept their distance were now interacting with customers differently. There were no more judgmental glances, no more whispered assumptions. Maxie could see the change, even if it was subtle. Then came the moment that cemented it. A customer walked in dressed in worn-out jeans and an old jacket, looking every bit the part of someone who wasn't supposed to be in a luxury dealership. Maxie saw Lana approaching him, her posture stiff, her gaze calculating. But this time something was different. She smiled warmly, greeted the customer with respect, and led him to the cars without hesitation. Maxie watched from a distance, his heart swelling with pride. The change had taken root. It wasn't just about policy anymore, it was about who these people had become, the shift in their minds, in their hearts. And that's when he realized this wasn't just about building a business. This was about building a legacy of respect, fairness, and dignity. And that was something no one could take away from him or from them. He walked back to his office, a quiet sense of satisfaction settling over him. The hardest part was over. Now all he had to do was watch as the dealership became something new, a place where everyone belonged no matter who they were. Maxie smiled to himself. He had won, and the real work was just beginning. The weeks that followed were nothing short of transformative. The shift in the dealership's atmosphere was undeniable. Customers who once felt judged by their appearance now walked in with a sense of confidence. The staff, though initially resistant, had begun to truly understand what Maxie had set out to do. And the results, they spoke for themselves. Maxie wasn't just talking about change, he was living it. From the moment the doors opened, the place felt different. The air was lighter, charged with an energy that was both new and long overdue. Every employee, from the seasoned salespeople to the fresh-faced trainees, was walking taller. They weren't just selling cars anymore, they were building relationships. Real relationships based on respect, not assumptions. It wasn't perfect. There were moments when old habits crept in. When Lana caught herself slipping into old patterns, she quickly corrected herself. When Chris had doubts, Maxie was there guiding him through it. The conversations weren't always easy, but they were always honest. And that made all the difference. But the biggest shift came from the customers. They felt it. The change was palpable. Maxie watched as one after another people walked through the showroom doors, looking not just to buy a car, but to be treated like they belonged. A young woman with her child in tow had once been ignored by another salesperson. Now she was greeted with warmth. Her son handed a toy to keep him busy as she was shown the cars. She smiled, her eyes soft with gratitude, knowing she wasn't just another face in the crowd. And then there was Mr. Harris, a longtime customer who had almost stopped coming to Prestige Motors after a series of uncomfortable encounters. Maxie remembered the first time Mr. Harris had come in after the change. He'd walked in, looked around, and when Lana greeted him this time with genuine respect, he stopped, his eyebrows raised in surprise. But this time the smile he gave wasn't just out of politeness. It was real. It was earned. Maxie stood in the back, watching it all unfold, a quiet sense of satisfaction settling in. But what struck him most wasn't the increased sales or the positive feedback. It was the realization that he had done something bigger than just turn a business around. He had given people back their dignity. And that's something that can never be measured by numbers alone. The ripple effect went beyond the showroom floor. Word of the dealership's transformation spread slowly but surely. Customers were talking, telling their friends about the different kind of place they had visited. Employees once skeptical had become the biggest advocates for the changes. They were proud of what they were building, proud of the fact that they had a role in making it happen. Maxie had built a foundation not just of cars, but of community. And that foundation was strong because it was built on something that didn't bend or break under pressure, respect. But the true impact, it wasn't just felt in the dealership. It was felt in the streets, in the lives of the people who walked in the way they held their heads a little higher as they drove off in their new cars. Maxie had done more than change the culture of a dealership. He had changed the way people felt about themselves. And as for Maxie, he knew this was only the beginning. There was more work to be done, more people to reach, more minds to change. But for the first time since he'd walked in unnoticed and underestimated, Maxie felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. This was only the start. And Maxie wasn't stopping now. Maxie had done more than change a dealership. He had sparked a movement that wasn't about cars, but about dignity, respect, and breaking down the barriers we build based on assumptions. This wasn't just about turning a profit, it was about transforming lives. It was about showing everyone that no matter who you are or how you look, you deserve to be treated with respect. Now, Maxie's story is more than just his own. It's a story we all can relate to. The power of standing up, of challenging the status quo, of refusing to let others define your worth based on what you wear or how you look. So, what about you? Have you ever been judged before? Ever felt like you didn't belong? Maxie proved that you don't have to accept that because change starts with us. It starts with you. If you believe in respect, fairness, and treating everyone with dignity, then make your voice heard. Hit that like button, share this story with someone who needs to hear it, and drop a comment telling us how you're challenging assumptions in your life. And if you want more stories about real change, about people who stand up, push back, and make a difference, don't forget to subscribe. Maxie's journey is just one of many, and trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next.